Hello and welcome to this, which is something that you probably haven't seen before. It is a explanation of the planets in the solar system, and in particular with reference to their symbols as what those planets mean spiritually. Hi, I'm Nigel St. James, clairvoyant. Now, in the description, you will find a sort of a companion to this, which is the journey of the soul through the various signs from entering into matter and then returning to union. I'll put a link to that into the description. In the description also, you'll see information which relates to the clairvoyant readings which I provide to people all over the world, and for healings which I provide to people all over the world as well. So check out the description for those items. Now let's get things underway and talk about the spiritual meanings of the planets. Now, the planets that I'm going to refer to are the luminaries, which are the sun and the moon, but they are both referred to as planets in astrology, as you will probably know, and then the other wandering stars, as they are so called, or the classical planets. Now, why were they called the wandering stars? Because years ago in Babylon, probably about 4,000 years or more, the ancient seers looked up into the heavens and they saw that most of the stars that were up there didn't seem to move, they seemed fixed. And in fact, if we look at them today, they wouldn't really have changed position much at all. If at all, because they're so far away, but some of the stars seem to wander around and in a particular line, which is called the ecliptic. Those stars actually are the planets, but because the sunlight reflected off them, they looked like stars. Hence, they are called wandering stars. Now, what we do know is this about spirituality, and in particular about the signs relating to the sun, moon, Venus, Mercury, and so on, is that those glyphs, those symbols, they were designed to conceal as much as they were designed to reveal. You see, spiritual teaching really needs to be done in ordinary language, in everyday language. But the deeper realities of the spirit can only be discovered by intuition, by insight, and through escaping the material world by going within. Now, the language of the spirit is not like that of a physical object, but rather the language of spirit is like a poem or a piece of music which arouses in you sensitivity and imagination. Now, written language and spoken language, referring to spiritual matters or spirit in particular, it's really only approximate. In fact, written and spoken language with respect to spirit is conditioned by the language itself, the time at which things happen, the intellect which is delivering the written or the spoken word, and really at best, with everything else going for it, that language acts as a pointer. It's a sign only to what's going on. Now, to understand spirituality, of course, reading sacred texts from whatever tradition helps. But the thing I would counsel you with there is to read from the heart and not from the mind, and always read with what is revealed several layers deep. The other thing which is probably relevant to this subject, I think, is that of mythology, myths. Now, the planets are called after Roman gods or goddesses, which had their origins in the Greek mythology. And when we hear the word myth, it doesn't mean that something is wrong or that it is stupid. Rather, myths were the way in which spiritual truths were sought to be explained, very often to a population 99% of whom could neither read nor write, but in a way which might bring out some reaction to them, which might give them some insight, which might give them some enlightenment. So when someone says, well, I no longer believe, and we don't believe in the god of Jupiter, so why should I believe in any other god? Well, that's kind of missing the point. It's because, although ordinarily people did believe in gods called Jupiter, the theologians who developed these myths and stories were, as theologians who developed myths relating to, say, the book of Genesis, for example, or maybe even the sacred works, the old days of the Upanishads and others in the Hindu tradition. It's the mythology which enables the mind, the material mind, the person that's involved every day in trying to make ends meet, trying to get things to happen, gives them some insight into what the nature and attributes of the divine may be. Now, the ancient seers who came up with astrology, their interest really was in religion. That is to say, their interest was, what is the spiritual meaning of life itself? Why are we here? That's the main question, isn't it? It just so happened that predictive astrology was one of the things that came along with it. But it was a very sacred tradition, and it's one which, in a time when there were, actually most people couldn't read and write, as I said, where most people didn't have the opportunity to sit around and think about things, so we had smart people who weren't distracted by internet or by television or magazines or newspapers or things like that. They could sit around and think and discuss what was the meaning of existence. One of the things that they talked about was that of astrology, and we're going to look into it now, beginning with the sun. Well, the sun. The sun is the most important planet in the solar system. The harmony between the other planets depends on the gravitational pull of the sun. Now, the sun provides the life forces which energize all forms of existence. That's the spiritual undertone of connecting the sun, and in particular the symbol of the sun, which we'll look at just in a second, as to what it means for us here on Earth. Because when the sun is withdrawn, it brings about decay and dissolution of matter, doesn't it? Let's have a look at the sun symbol, shall we? And it's actually quite simple, because the sun symbol is a point which is surrounded by a circle. Quite straightforward, isn't it? But there's a lot more to it than that. Now, the other thing is this, is that the level of teaching which comes from the ancients to deal with symbols, there are different layers which come, and when the student is ready, the meaning will become available. But we can get a good overview of it now. Now, the most important thing here, in one respect, is this, and it is this point. Because if you look on this side here, there isn't anything, is there? There's nothing. Then we say, well, why is there nothing? Well, because there's no point. And if you don't have a point, you can't have a circumference, because there's nothing to surround. So what we can say is that once you do get a point, you can have an emanation, which, I'm just doing this in a small way, forgive my freehand here. There is, from the radius at equal distances, the circumference which goes. But here is the lesson in this, that if one were to take away that point, then what would happen is this would disappear. And why is that so? Because the point represents the fountainhead, the source, the spring, if you like, of divine energy from which every form of physical, of material manifestation is derived. It all comes from this point, which is the divine outpouring. So the central point is crucial, as we saw. If you don't have a point, then this disappears. So what is this? This is the boundary, if you like, of manifestation, which arises from the point. Now, we don't know how far away that boundary might be. We don't know what extent it might be. But the ancients said, well, whatever it is, we do know this, that without that, there is nothing here. And this circle surrounds, it represents the entirety of physical manifestation. Now, the interesting thing that you probably may not have known of or thought of is this, is that in geometry, in the real world, in this universe, in space and time as we know it, there is no such thing physically as a point. It doesn't exist. We make up one, we use something which looks like one, because we say, oh, there needs to be a point somewhere. Or someone might say, oh, well, you can get a point when you have two intersecting lines, but they have to start from a point. But there is no such thing as a point. There is no, it doesn't take up any space. It has no dimension. It's got no up, no down, no this way, no that. It's got no mass. The other interesting thing is this, is that, so first of all, in the real world, there is no such thing as a point. And in the real world, it might surprise you to know that there is no such thing as a circle. Yeah, of course, there are plenty of things that look like a circle. We've just got one here now, haven't we? It looks like a circle, but it's not real. It is an illusion, as much an illusion as the point is itself. There is no such thing as a circle in the universe, in manifestation. And how do we know that? Well, because we can say that the ancient Greeks did us the favor by saying that, well, if you want to find out how long this thing is around, then what you do is you take a value which is called pi, and I don't want to get into the math of it, times twice the diameter, I think it is. So 2 times the diameter of the circle multiplied by pi. And if you want to find the area of the circle, you take a radius, square it, and multiply that by pi. Now, pi roughly is 3.14 something, and then it's a whole lot of decimal points that go after it. The point is, though, at the time of making this video, the number of decimal points that pi represents has never actually finished. It has not ended. It's been calculated to over 100 trillion places, and it keeps going without repeating. What that means is that it is an illusion to say that you can calculate an area of a circle or even find what its real circumference is. Of course, there's approximations, naturally. Most of life works on near enough is good enough, doesn't it? But the point is, it doesn't exist. However, what this does also show from this point here is that the sun with this point includes within itself every aspect and every potential aspect of manifestation as manifestation might evolve. There's no problem with evolution as far as spirituality is concerned, because evolution relates to physical manifested objects and things. It's not spirit, which is formless, dimensionless, and ageless. But this symbol here is also telling us that the sun actually externalizes pure consciousness. Now, pure consciousness, that is, you can have pure well, when I say you can, there is pure consciousness. People associate that with being itself, and you may have your own terminology for it. I'm not going to put anything into you. Most of them have got bad brand names associated with them, sadly, these days anyway. But the point is that pure consciousness is externalized. It allows physical things to emerge from it and take up space and have up and down and backwards and forwards. Pure consciousness isn't actually affected by any form or any experience. Time doesn't exist within it. Pure consciousness doesn't age. It doesn't get younger. It doesn't get old. Nothing restricts the movement or the desire of pure consciousness. So it is able to move, to externalize things. There is also, with pure consciousness, eternal duration, as far as we are concerned. That is, it is infinite. It is endless, as far as time is concerned. So the sun allows materiality and material things to emerge from it. And this is from outside of pure consciousness itself. What now happens is that pure consciousness has, if you like, allowed the emergence of things which it can perceive in a physical form, in reality, running it rather than just being aware of it and having knowledge of it, actually see it run, have a working model of it, I suppose, in something which is different to itself. And one might say that pure consciousness then is also able to have a relationship with what has emerged from it. Now, evolution, of course, can occur, and it doesn't offend pure consciousness in the slightest, because evolution is simply making, over time, those things or potentialities which are hidden to become revealed. So things can change. The other thing about this sun thing is to say that there is, if you like, there's always a direction to solar radiation. The direction is always from the point outwards. It's always outwards, and it's always at an equal measure right there. And this circumference, one can go from point to point to point to point to point around there. So this pattern, there are patterns which occur in manifestation as a result of the emergence of manifestation from pure consciousness as symbolized by the sun. And these patterns that occur in the universe or space and time, we very often call the laws of nature. Well, the laws of nature are patterns. And what we find with this symmetry, with things making sense, if you look deep enough into them, is that the material things are able to be understood by scientists or whomever. So there is a great symmetry to the creation as a result of this symbol. Now, the other thing is that I think that as far as the individual horoscope is concerned, it seems to me that the sun indicates the amount of divine energy flowing through different created things in accordance with the stage and quality of their manifestation. For example, you would expect that there is a higher level of divine energy flowing through you than there is through a rock. But remember always, if this central point were to withdraw or disappear, everything here would in an instant cease to exist. Now, people often wonder about the extent of the ascendant as far as it relates to the sun. Well, as between the sun and the ascendant, the sun is your central motivating force, and the ascendant represents your existing tendencies. I don't think I need to say anything more about that, nor about the sun, because next we're going to look at its partner, well, the moon. We have just glimpsed, have we not, that this solar impulse is the spiritual core of manifestation itself. Well, the moon can be seen as the cosmic mother, the eternal womb, if you like, which solar energy impregnates in order to allow the spiritual fire to permit the emergence of physical material form from out of pure consciousness. The moon, in a sense, is like a chalice that receives the downpour of cosmic creative life force. And this is the general symbol which is associated with it. I think what's interesting, though, is that the moon is always withdrawing, isn't it? And so, although it's important for life on Earth, it has been said, for example, that the sun imparts life to the entire planetary system, and the moon, in reflecting the light of the sun, imparts life to Earth itself, but it withdraws, and therefore it's associated with death and destruction as well. It destroys life, it has to be said. Now, in a sense, the moon is nature itself, and it is also what I would call the holder of the subtler forms which are of interest to mystics and people who, through great concentration, can make things happen according to their will. I don't see there's anything profitable to be gained by my going into that with you just now. It takes some time to come to that skill, and in an ethical way, I might say. But anyway, here is a symbol. Two concave lines, are they not, joined at the end. Now, why does the moon look like that? Because we know that the moon changes its shape every single night. In fact, it's a really fast-moving planet. It's out of the sign in 2.5 days, probably, something like that. I don't know. It's a very fast-moving planet, and its shape is always changing. Two concave lines. Well, this could be misleading, really, couldn't it? Because, as I say, the moon does change every night, but there are three possibilities, I suppose, as to what these concave lines could refer to. They could refer to the early waxing stage of the moon, or the late waning stage of the moon. May well refer to the later stage of a lunar eclipse. And perhaps, to take it away from physical objects, it might well also refer to surging emotions which rise up and settle down like waves on the ocean itself. Well, there are three possibilities. But these three possibilities are all dependent on the sun, as always. But let's look at each one of them. First of all, where we're looking at the waxing and the waning as a possibility. This is referring to you being receptive to the light, to that consciousness, to that divine light and energy which is within you, so that you can go within and find the spark of divinity which is within you. The other thing is that if we are talking about it being in the sense of a lunar eclipse, then what we would find is, for example, that the Earth, being materiality, stands between the sun, which is the source, and the moon. And then what happens is that the moon then, representing your psyche, your soul self, it has a shadow cast upon it by the eclipse, or by concentrating on material things to the exclusion of the development of a spiritual life. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go and jump into a Carmelite order of nuns and become a contemplative or lock yourself away in a monastery or something like that. But each of us can express spirituality, as you know more than I do, I suppose. And the arcs can, of course, also refer to emotions. And emotions very much are often affected by the moon itself. Now, what is important here is, though, that these arcs they're not temporary. Even though they are here, even though the moon does change, this is always the form of the moon symbol. So it's not temporary, it's long-acting. And they show long-term movement and long-term evolution and development of space and time over time. As I say, I'll repeat it again, there's no conflict between spirit, which is spirit, and evolution, which is matter. It could well be that this inner arc here refers to, remember when we had a look at the sun? Well, I'll just do a very quick, bad approximation of the sun. This, in a sense, looks like that outside circumference of the sun, doesn't it? And so there may well be here the inner arc of yourself, emotions rushing towards this point, which is the fountainhead of all manifestation and creation. And your inner surges are something that you will be familiar with, and they're nothing to be afraid of. Now, it has been said there's a woman, I don't know if you've ever heard of well, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but a Russian lady called, known as Madame Blavatsky, a mystic who is essentially recognized as the founder of the Theosophical movement. She had the opinion that the moon itself was a corpse, that it had nothing in it. Well, with due respect to her, she's wrong. That is not correct. The moon is in the bosom of the sun, always, and is in the bosom of the light that comes from that point of pure consciousness. Now, what do we do next? Do we look at, you'd think that we would look at Mercury next. I'm just looking at the diagrams, and I've just done this moon diagram. I think we'll do Venus next, then Mercury. So next is Venus. Well, now we have a look at Venus. Well, the lesser benefic, as it is called in Western astrology, and it has feminine form. The moon has feminine form as well, and the sun is masculine, incidentally. Thought I'd mention that. Sometimes people think there's a confusion about the moon, and it could have male or female attributes to it. It's female. Looking back at that last one. Now here we have female sign, planet in that of Venus. Well, Venus is the most occult. It's the most powerful and the most mysterious of the planets. And it is the planet which has the greatest influence on Earth itself. Actually, if we have a look at the symbol for Venus, and let me just show it to you, you see that it is this, which is a circle with a cross underneath it. Well, do you know what the symbol for Earth is? Now, you might have come across something which looks like that, which is a circle with a cross inside of it. Well, that's really more to do with astronomy. It's not to do with astrology. The actual astrological symbol for Earth is this. It's the mirror image of Venus. So it's a circle with the cross on top of it. Again, apologies for my hand shaking here. Too many readings. Now, so what we have here is, this is Venus with the cross underneath it. Here is the Earth with the cross on top of it. Oh, big deal. Let's have a look first of all to see what it means for our sister here, Venus. The other benefic planet, of course, is Jupiter. But Venus and Jupiter are very different, as you will later see when we get into Jupiter. Now, first of all, here we have a circle that's similar to the Sun, but it doesn't represent the state of entire manifestation as it does in the symbol of the Sun. Here, the circle represents the spiritual essence evolving through manifestation over time. And it also shows that within it, it holds within it the entire potential, the entire latent, hidden faculties, attributes, opportunities, things that will occur in the course of evolution of humans as well as other life over the aeons, over time ahead, and we don't know how long that will be before it stops. Now, we have an idea when the Sun is going to expand. We think it does. It's 4 billion years or something like that. But what it also shows is it shows the period here of the evolution of humans over time until they get to the point where they understand, recognize, and are comfortable with the divinity within themselves, and in a sense, metaphorically, ascend to the throne of the mother or the father, that is, in heaven itself. Now, the Venus impulse is extremely important for the generation of life on Earth, for nurturing it, for preserving it, and for encouraging procreation and multiplication of different life forms on her. The cross stands for opposites. Now, for opposites, now incidentally, the horizontal line refers to the female principle. The vertical line refers to the male principle. Placed underneath the circle like this, it showed to the seers, and for those who have looked at it through the eyes of the heart, that what there is here is there is the divine essence coming and working its way through the unification of opposites here. It shows the bringing together of opposites. Now, what I might call the primeval energy, or what we've previously referred to as pure consciousness, it now, through Venus, is encouraging, it is enabling the expansion of different forms of material existence. Not just life, but other things as well. I mean, arguably, you could say that everything is alive, which is a view which I hold myself. But it is involved in the enabling of the variety of things that can exist. In fact, one only needs to look back on the history of the Earth and realize that 99% of everything alive that ever did exist actually has died out. And yet, the planet is still full of life. And who knows what else is out there? Now, what can also be said here is that Venus is directly, fervently, massively involved in the sex impulse. It's also involved in sociability, family relationships, the development of relationship. It's about attracting things. It's about beauty. And it's about sense gratification in particular. There is here a real sensuality that's produced by the Venus impulse. There's a craving, a debauchery even can occur. Now, this is a particularly strong impulse that comes from Venus. You see, pure consciousness itself, it doesn't have a difficulty with the responsible enjoyment of sensuality and all the other things that go with it, or of eating or drinking. Moderation is the key, as someone else has always seen you. But Venus definitely strengthens the urge for self-gratification. Venus is very much a planet of, it's all about me. It's me. What do I want? What do I want now? It's this egoistic sense that comes around spiritually with Venus. Now, this has its part to play in the divine mosaic, you see. Because still, underneath sense gratification, materiality, there is still underneath there the river that is flowing back to the divine, because all the sources of energy, all the experience, all the enjoyment of materiality is being used to fulfill the divine will. Now, Venus is also associated with, this may come as a surprise to you, but Venus is associated with the seminal fluid. That is the fluid in which the male sperm reside. Because Venus is very much about multiplication, about procreation. Venus is bringing to the earth. Remember, I say that Venus is the most occult planet, and I won't go into the details of that because that's a video length all by itself. But it is the planet that has the most effect on the planet of Earth, and its effect is to ensure that all the sense gratification, all the multiplication, everything actually finds its way back and fits in with the divine will. You see, nothing can not form part of the divine will. It's like trying to hold back the tide. You can't do it. In a sense, actually, it's got to be said that esoterically also, that Venus actually scatters the divine energy from the sun. You know it's the brightest star up there, of course, outside of, well, the wandering stars, but whether at morning or night, outside the moon and the sun, of course, it's the brightest of the planets. It scatters that metaphorical sun energy all throughout everywhere itself. Esoterically, also, Venus shows that all life forms have separated from pure consciousness. Well, of course they have, because pure consciousness has enabled the appearance of material, physical things, but there is now a duality that's there. But this duality is important because as I say, Venus is very carnal, very sexual, it's about desire, and the meeting place of that desire is right in the middle. The fact that, of course, that things have devolved into materiality, or that our bodies, or even what else it might be, I mean, you are not inside your body is inside of you. The earth is good. The universe is good. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, actually, and this isn't a religious lecture, but I am thinking now of there's in the Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament, Christian Old Testament, in chapter 1 of the book of Genesis, there's a very kind of philosophical approach to creation stories, one in chapter 1, another one in chapters 2 to 3. But in the first one, it's like, let there be land, let there be light, and everything like this. And then it said that God found the creation good. And that's said 7 times. Good, 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 good. What do we mean by good? I think what we mean by good is not to say that, well, this is tremendous. Rather, I think it's good from the point of view of someone who is thinking something into being from pure consciousness, that if you like, the specifications of what have been produced are correct. The functionality is correct. The functionality of the woman is correct. The functionality of the man is correct, as is that of the tree, the starfish, the octopus, the horse. The functionality meets the specification, which is good. Of course, over time, it evolves. And time and evolution are what bring about the opportunity for the latent things within humanity, long after we are gone from this life, in this form, to unfold. Well, next, because I have used this Venus symbol here, and previously we looked at the moon, we'll put the 3 of them together in Mercury. Well, now let's have a look at Mercury, which is often called the messenger of the gods. Now, unlike Venus, the moon, and the sun, there is no gender assigned to Mercury. It is neither male nor female, or if you like, it is both. It is androgynous. Now, Mercury stands for and is about intelligence. Mercury contains, let's have a look at the symbol, shall we? And you go, whoa, that looks like Venus to me. Well, it does, because here we have a circle with a cross hanging underneath it. And here we see the arc, which we previously had a look at in the discussion of the spirituality of the moon. Well, Mercury contains within itself all of the features of Venus: sensitivity, perception, and the tendency towards the materialization of divine energy. However, under the Mercury impulse, the Venus qualities are either pushed further down towards materialization, the deeper levels of materialization, or they are raised towards the soul's origin itself. Now, intelligence. We spoke of pure consciousness, didn't we, when we were discussing the sun? Now, without going over that material again, pure consciousness can be considered as an awareness, a knowledge of everything, potential, actual, and all the different permutations or variations that things may be. Knows everything. It is ageless. It is timeless. Well, Mercury is actually the bridge between that pure consciousness, and you, of course, can assign whatever name you want to that. It is the bridge between pure consciousness, the active potential that exists within pure consciousness, the potential, for example, to permit the emergence of physicality, of material things, of materialization, of time and space. So it's the bridge between that pure consciousness and the emerged physical beings that come from or are underpinned by that pure consciousness. Now, the arc of Mercury links it to that pure consciousness, which we see it coming down here, bringing it into the material realm, spreading the word, if you like, permitting beings to act intelligently, that is to say, an intelligence that is not just the storage of data or of facts, but rather the ability to think, to choose, to make judgments, to be able to take action with respect to things that actually don't even have any physical nature, such as love, beauty, morality, mathematics, time itself. So there is a field of operation for Mercury across all of creation and throughout all of time in the material space-time world that we are aware of. It operates throughout all of that period. But although it has a very close link to Venus, now of course you'd understand that Mercury is closest to the Sun and then Venus. They're quite closely linked anyway, quite apart from this representation of that fact, in that there is with Mercury a sheath, a sheet which represents bliss, and with Mercury there is a sheet or a sheath that represents intelligence. And bliss and intelligence, they can, depending on how they are perceived and acted on, have an effect on human beings and of all the facets of nature that's there. Now the whole thing together with this cross, the material, this is the materiality here, vertical line being masculine, horizontal line being feminine, but it also stands for opposites. That is, opposites in nature, the diversity, the duality of materialization. There is no creativity without the bringing together of opposites, that is, things that are attracting. And what we have here is that there is also, with Mercury, still this connection to the essence of all the forms found in matter. This essence which underpins their very existence, and were it to withdraw, they would disappear. Now this arc up here also is representative of the fact that Mercury does receive the cosmic downpour and acts upon it. Maybe unlike Mars, which we'll turn to next. So in the whole here, it is a good summary of the activity of Mercury, very often misunderstood, vital to life, and the connector between the divine and manifestation. Let's turn next to Mars. Well, now we're going to have a look at Mars, and the symbol for Mars is really quite straightforward. It's a circle with an arrow jutting out of it. Now, Mars is known as the lesser malefic in Western predictive astrology in the sense that it causes bad things. But from a spiritual point of view, and from the point of view of the people that the planet governs, in particular Aries and Scorpio, it is actually a very beneficial, indispensable, wildly prosperous planet. In fact, it is in a sense the protector of the universe. Now, we've seen a circle before, but this time I want to look at it as if it's a golden egg, and I'll tell you why in a second. You can call it the golden egg, or the unknown depth from which everything comes forth, and which is going to come forth. This circle here, this egg if you like, this unknown depth, it indicates the first extent or the first boundary of divine energy which is under the impulse of cosmic evolution. You see, this divine energy continues to spill into space and time for as long as space and time happens to be around. It is, if you like, the warehouse, the storehouse of all the energy states which are yet to become manifested as material things, as well as all those things which have become manifested as material things. The arrow, which is here, it really represents the process of the unfolding of manifestation, the process of the unfolding of the evolution of physical manifestation and reality. Because this process is ongoing, because whatever is inside of this egg, it is going to come out. It has to come out. And it does come out under the impulse of Mars. Now, in a sense, one can, if you can recall, you would have seen images or video of baby birds breaking their way out of an egg. It's a lot of stress, a lot of tension is required to break through the egg. Now, that tension, that energy expended in breaking through that shell, that enclosure, that boundary, in order to become the free flower as the thing in creation, then what we see here is that the process can be for the bird, but you can draw the analogy back to ourselves when things come up. The process can be unsettling, can be disturbing, it can be difficult and hard. Now, I suppose that's why in Western predictive astrology, Mars has the reputation as being the lesser malefic, the greater malefic, of course, being Saturn, which we will finish with. But one can also think of not just an egg, but with this period of hardship that sometimes comes about when you break through something. You can imagine the birth of a baby. You've all seen a baby being born. What does it do as soon as it's delivered? It utters a cry. It starts crying when it has gone from inside of this cosmic egg, if you like, or the cosmic womb, in this case the womb of the mother, and into manifestation as an independent being. It cries. Tremendous pressure is required. And a tremendous pressure is required for the breaking of the veil within our soul path in order that we can reveal our inner potential. So this process of breaking through and the hardship, difficulties, setbacks that come with it, whether it be for the baby bird or for the baby human that's born, or the seeker, you can see that it's actually for the good of the person. So Mars is actually acting for the good of manifestation. The symbol entirely refers, I think, to human beings as well, on one view. Human beings with all of their limitations, which within them nevertheless possess the potential of the absolute itself. It is within you. You are the spark that comes from the flame, the drop that comes from the ocean. Now, as for Mars itself, its energy is best employed when there is some adversity to be overcome, when there's some opposition. That's when Mars really comes to its fore. And of course, there it has the reputation as being the warrior planet, of course. And as every warrior or soldier knows, there is sacrifice involved in that, and there is also great courage involved in that as well. The thing I'll say about Mars is this also, is that Mars does not seek to blend its consciousness with anybody or anything itself. It wants to stay independent. It wants to seize heaven all by itself. Mars can and does produce great sexuality, great attraction. Well, as we've seen previously, with the cross, where the opposites are attracting and they meet in the center, that's required for the development, the extension of all forms of the variety of manifestation that can occur within the universe over the time and over the course of the universe, which presumably is going to look different in a trillion years' time than it does now. The other thing about Mars is that Mars can be quite arrogant. Mars can be quite arrogant to the extent that it can refuse to comply with the instructions of the absolute itself. There's also a great degree of mental independence to Mars. Mars, for example, if it comes across spiritual teachings that it doesn't like, it doesn't get involved in debate, rather it just withdraws and gets on with its own thing. And Mars is also somebody who wants to remain aloof from authority. Mars is at its best, and its role is best fulfilled when it is working for the good of the whole of humanity, other people to start with, humanity greater, the universe entirely. As I said, I think at the beginning, Mars is actually the protector of the universe. So Mars is best in that role, rather than in any pursuit in which it seeks self-gratification, when it can definitely run off course. Well, having gone from now the lesser malefic, let's turn to the greater benefic, which is that of Jupiter. We now turn to the planet of Jupiter, and well, what is its spiritual meaning? Jupiter is always about applying the brakes to the materialization process and then consolidating the gains that have been made. So materialization is flying out. It, if you like, wants to slow it down to consolidate and work out how things can be put together in the most beneficial way, to try and use in language an abstract term or concept. In fact, what we can see here in the symbol for the, there's not going out of focus. We can see here in the symbol for Jupiter, the cross, which as you know refers to materialization in whole. In fact, it's the horizontal line in particular that we're concerned about, that speaks to the materiality, to physicality, to material created things. And the arc coming down is the process of spiritualizing this matter, this materiality. See, that's the function of Jupiter. Jupiter wants to slow down and consolidate manifestation in order that it can become spiritualized. Now, the impact of Jupiter is to bring outward religious satisfaction, a contentment with religion. It's not an inward thing necessarily at all. It's about people being happy to profess faith or to follow traditions to do with spirituality and religions, what have you. So much so that the matter that's represented by this horizontal line, by Jupiter in this arc, becomes it becomes soaked with missionary fervor. The physical universe, the process of materialization, becomes soaked with spiritual fervor and enjoyment. So much so that for Jupiter people can see God everywhere. There is a real balance between spirituality and physicality, and of course of desire and all the things that go with that, which for the Jupiterian personality, in particular this applies to folks like Pisces or Sagittarius, then they're involved in a process whereby there is a real love of life and the spirituality is not in conflict with that. The role of Jupiter also is to, which I would say, to avoid the more difficult consequences of the manifestation process. I will say that people who have been influenced by Jupiter can, as I say, mix the physical with the spiritual. So much so that this enjoyment of life that I refer to, with its spirituality attached to it or infused with it, it's as if they see the face of God everywhere, even if they can't make out all of the features of it. And it is, to borrow the phrase from that 1970s movie in the West called The Blues Brothers, it's almost as if they are on a mission from God. But Jupiter does strive to avoid the undesirable consequences of manifestation, as I say. Now, this means that Jupiter, and those people who are under the Jupiter impulse, will seek money, status, power, because it's a protection. But they know that money, status, and power are not the end game. They know that. In fact, Jupiter knows knowledge, the knowledge that Jupiter seeks with the outbound mind, that is, rather than the knowledge which comes in an instant, in a moment of transcendence, whether in prayer or meditation or however. Yeah, that knowledge that you get that can't be expressed in language, I'm sure you have had a moment of it in your life. Jupiter knows that knowledge obtained with the outbound mind is actually an illusion itself, and that name and form are just illusions. Now, we, in our discussion of the sun, didn't we? We saw that the presence of a point or of a circle were, in fact, an illusion. Yeah, it looks like it's there, but it is an illusion. In fact, to look at the progress of the history of evolution on this planet. There is an American professor by the name of Donald Hoffman, who with his team has for a number of years done countless computer-driven, of course, mathematical simulations as to the fitness for survival of the organism on Earth. And what they did was they looked at those organisms that actually were interested in finding truth, the real nature of things, as opposed to those things that weren't interested in truth, but were only interested in shortcuts that could permit eating, breeding, and rearing children. What they found was every time that those organisms or those examples that were set up, which were about the seeking of learning what was actually true in reality, they all died out. And those things that looked at the shortcut didn't. I mean, for example, if you'd look at your Google icon on your computer, the analogy is to say that the Google icon itself is the truth rather than what's behind it. Jupiter holds manifestation together by the exercise of its wisdom. Now, there is a real goodness to Jupiter, but that goodness should never be mistaken for weakness, because Jupiter has real authority, and Jupiter's authority is sacred. And it is sacred due to its wisdom and its complete unity with the divine will. Well, let's finally have a look at Saturn, shall we? We'll return finally to the planet of Saturn, the Great Malefic, as it is called in pretty well every form of astrology around the world, certainly in the Western tradition and also in the Vedic or Hindu tradition as well. What is going on, you might ask yourself? Well, let's have a look at the symbol and see what is happening. Why has it got such a bad reputation? It's actually a very good planet, Saturn, in my opinion. Now, what we can see here is that there is what looks like half a circle hanging from a cross. Now, you will have remembered that the cross represents materiality and manifestation. Well, that's got half a circle. In a way, it kind of resembles the symbol for Earth, which has a full circle. I'll just draw it here freehand. Well, actually, it's... I'm the Jackson Pollock of YouTube astrology and tarot videos. This is the astrological symbol for the Earth, which is the circle with the cross on top of it. Now, this circle, the difference between the two, one with half a circle, if you like, and the other one with a full circle, is vital. Because for the Earth, which is this one here with the cross on top of the circle, the ever-active whirlwind of things going on in the cross is linked, isn't it, with the wholeness of the divine impulse, which is represented by the circle. It shows that a divine purpose exists in earthly manifestation. Now, in Saturn, the cross is kind of a sort of a scary sort of a symbol in a way. In the Saturn symbol, you see here with the cross with the arc below it, it shows that there is divine pressure being put on the evolving person, which would be you, and it would be me. There is here divine pressure being put on the evolving person to move from material concerns, involvement in, soaking in, luxuriating in and doing nothing else but enjoying materiality, to move from those concerns to the person's spiritual goal. Now, each of us has our own spiritual goal. We are immortal spirits which have decided to incarnate here in order to learn and to achieve things and to meet a particular goal, and everyone is different. So this doesn't apply across the board, but your own goal will be different to someone else's goal. It's your spiritual goal. Now this arc to the right, that's in the Saturn sign there, it's really showing, I think, this is showing, it's like the map. This is the path towards, and if you can imagine it then coming and joining around here again, it is showing you the path to reunion once again with being itself, or with pure consciousness, as I've referred to it during the course of this video. This is the Saturn impulse itself. Now, Saturn, as you can see then, is actually, what it's doing is it's saying, look, you have a soul purpose, you're straying from it, for whatever reason. Generally it's to do with things which are to do with life, with enjoying, with eating, drinking, sex, and there's nothing wrong with those things per se, as we saw in Jupiter. The Jupiterian is very, very at home with mixing spirituality with materiality. But here, what Saturn is doing is it's saying, I want to bring you back on course for your soul contract, because you have lost your way. You have strayed from the course. You have strayed from what's your soul purpose here. And what happens is that if the veils, the sheaths, the sheets of materiality aren't translucent enough to allow the soul to understand its position, then what happens is that Saturn forces... The result of this can be psychological limitations that one runs up against. And during this period also, you see, there is the urge. Saturn intensifies, if you like, almost as a test. It intensifies the desire for material experience on all realms. But what it's saying is, by all means, experience the world and everything that it has to offer. But remember why you, the real you, not this character that you've created, but the real you is here. Now, the way to free yourself from this, when the cross has full sway, if you like, you are immersed in it, you have psychological problems, you have frustration, you have what seem to you to be discontent, unhappiness, things going wrong almost. These are hints that somehow or other just pop up in a way that really can't be explained, but then most of the things in life I find there is really no explanation for it, is there? I don't think we've actually got to the bottom of any of this stuff really in the material universe, despite the very intelligent actions of scientists for a long time, until they strayed into scientific materialism, which is like a religion in itself. The way out of this is to, and the way to get redemption, the way to get released from the psychological traumas almost that come about from this Saturnian impulse that comes in, is to understand that you, the physical vehicle that you come into, yeah, it does have needs. It does have desires. It has a will to do things. That's okay. But understand that for what it is and understand the difference you are to it. Enjoy it, but don't get lost in it, I suppose is the point there. Now the thing is that there is no room to move when the Saturn impulse falls upon you. You can't get out of it. There is no escape. There's no negotiation. You can't bargain your way out of it. What this is saying here with Saturn is that there is a need for change. And this can be felt as pain and suffering, which is no doubt why in predictive astrology Saturn has such a bad rap as being the great malefic. Because who wants pain and suffering? Well, nobody's sensible anyway. Well, no one does, do they? So not real pain and suffering. But what you can find here also with this Saturn impulse, that when there is pain and suffering around, is that you can see tremendous negativity arise in the psychology of a person. You have seen people, I'm sure, who are profoundly negative, have a very negative outlook on life. They're not living to their soul purpose. I'll say that. I don't think it needs a doctor. I think it just needs an epiphany. After a period of frustration and pain, I suppose, we find that strength develops. Everything that you have overcome, you have found that you are stronger as a result. Now, to put it in really ordinary terms, I mean, if you go to the gym and have pain and suffering in the gym, you end up with a fit body or lots of muscles around you and stuff like that. The thing with Saturn is, Saturn acts very slowly. Why is it acting slowly? It's because it is acting upon the soul of the person. And the wisdom that is gained by a person as a result of struggle or coming back online towards it. It may not be right back online with the soul purpose. There could be some movement towards it. So the wisdom, so it may not be a total move to the soul purpose. You might just be getting in a direction. Saturn is pushing you. And the wisdom that results is proportionate to the struggle that you have felt that you have overgone. So the bigger the problem, the more wisdom you have achieved by overcoming it or experiencing it, more your soul is enriched. Saturn does not show you what the ultimate goal is at first. It doesn't say, I'm coming in here because you're supposed to get back on path. No, it doesn't do that. Saturn will wait. It will find the right time. It will get you when it's necessary to be had or to be gotten at. So Saturn is not showing you your ultimate goal when it comes in at first. Rather, what it is doing is it is showing you the limitations of the material veil which is around you and encouraging the real you that it's acting on, the soul, to see this material veil for what it is and to not take it as being the real reality, not to get immersed in it to the exclusion of your soul purpose and maybe even your soul contract. Well, That's Saturn. Well, that finishes the spiritual meanings of the planets, and with reference to their symbols, which were developed and have been developed over thousands of years. I know that you will have found that just as interesting as I have always found it, and I have enjoyed your company, and thank you for inviting me into your home. So until I see you again, remember one thing, and it is this, that you are a legend, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. Until then, it's bye for now.